Good evening, folks. Welcome to I Can Science That. If anyone's out there, we are expecting a guest today. Today, we are going to be talking to a YouTuber by the name of Young Kali, and the topic will be gravity. Young Kali is not unique. You may have heard something like this before, but we'll talk about whether gravity as it's taught in science is the same as what we observe out in the real world or not. He's the type of person who thinks that it is not. So we'll get to that. Hopefully he'll be here shortly. In the meantime, I wanted to go through our list of evidence as it stands so far and see if anyone has really anything that they can contribute to that. We have a rather lengthy list for the globe side. And before I go and start just checking them all off, I need any input that is available for the flat side. So anybody who can say, I've got a really good explanation for why that is the way it is, I'd love to hear that. Or if anyone maybe has some evidence or some logical explanations for why my logic is not sound, that'd be great. So let me start with, I'm going to go through the globe evidence because we have a lot more of that. Hello, Eileen. Since I have the globe evidence up, I'm going to share that. Here I am. I'm sharing my globe evidence list. Let's see. Let's make it bigger. I want it bigger. There you go. There you can see it now. So, so far I have them all marked as investigating because I really would like to hear from somebody who is skeptical. What it would take before we can say we have a good solid piece of evidence here. All right, I'll go through them. Let's start at the top. The sun rises and sets. This is my own. So the sun rises, the sun sets. We've sometimes heard that it does not, that it shrinks into the distance. But I am convinced that that is not the case. I have seen the shrinking videos, and I have seen the refutation of that, and it's quite clear to me that it does not sink. So that leaves us with this atmospheric lensing supposition. So if we are to believe that the Earth is flat, we'll need some explanation for why the sun is not where it appears to be. Okay, so I think we'll need some reason why the sun is not where it appears to be, and that's going to be a repeated statement over and over again. The items in the sky make it look like the Earth is flat. It looks flat, but it's not flat. Let me rephrase that. I got that backwards. The Earth looks flat from the horizon, right? So we trust our eyes. We say, it looks flat, so it is flat. But then we watch the sunset. The sun goes down below the horizon. Now it does not look flat. Now it looks like the sun is going below the horizon, but it must not be, right? So now we say, oh, I can't trust my eyes. Okay, so I guess I'm down to which is it? Which is it? Do I trust my eyes or do I not trust my eyes? And I guess we're going to pick and choose. So if anyone has any really good way to investigate this further, that'd be great. But at this point, it seems like pure speculation that we really want it to be flat, and our observations are not consistent with that. And so we are inventing possibilities. That's, maybe that's okay, but then we have to test those possibilities. Okay, so that's that one, and we're going to see that over and over again. Next up, the Eratosthenes style observation. We did one right here, and here's a link to that video. Same deal. The sun, where the place the sun is and the way the sun moves is not consistent with any flat Earth model that has ever been presented. It's not consistent with just being flat. It is specifically consistent with globe. So these observations are why you would think that it's a globe. Maybe it isn't. Maybe we're just being fooled by our eyes. So that's the latest thing, is it really is flat, but it looks like a globe, right? It's really flat, but it looks like a globe. Okay, what's next? Clouds or even structures lit from below at a sunrise or sunset. Once again, the sun appears to be lower than the clouds, and that cannot happen on a flat Earth. And I don't even have an explanation for that. I'm trying to think. In many cases where refraction has been proposed, it's an interesting question. 11th Chimp suggests that maybe chromatic dispersion is a way to investigate whether we're looking at refraction or not. I think that's an interesting idea. I'm not sure it's perfect, though. I thought that as well. But then I was watching somebody, I think it was Ruhif, went in pretty deep into atmospheric refraction in some of his videos, and actually showed that you don't get significant, I think maybe you don't get any chromatic dispersion when you're within the same medium as the light source. So if the light source is outside the medium, we definitely see that. So yeah, I would have to look into that deeper. I'm not really sure. So possibly that's a way to investigate those. That's really good. That's clever. Okay, so let's speculate, could the same explanation for why the sun appears to be going below the horizon also cause the light from the sun to hit the bottom of the clouds? I think so. I think that's, if the light is doing these shenanigans, then maybe that would do it. Yes, you can actually literally measure atmospheric refraction. Absolutely, you can. Sure. The only problem is, if I can devil's advocate here, how do you measure the atmospheric refraction 2,000 miles up into the sky where the sun is at, right? If the sun is out there at 2,000, 3,000 miles away, I can't measure that refraction. Okay, movement of the stars in the southern hemisphere. It's even harder than the other things, but really it's all the same. These are all sort of the same piece of evidence. The same explanation should work for all of these so far. The bottom line of all of these is that we look up into the celestial sphere, right? We look up into the sky and it looks like a sphere. The sky looks like a sphere that is moving around us. And then if you just go around the Earth and you see time zones, you realize, okay, the Earth must be a sphere, right? So the Earth must be a sphere because of the way things move in the sky relative to where you are on the Earth. And it seems like rock solid evidence. It's definitely believe your eyeballs, believe your eyes. This is what's happening. But it could be, or let me ask, could it be that there is some kind of weird phenomenon occurring where all of these things really are not moving in a sphere around our sphere? It just looks like that. If anybody has any way to really test that, that'd be great. Hello, Dumb Jezza. Our guest has not arrived yet. Oh, hey, I got an email. Let's see if that's him. All kinds of hits. Blah, 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 blah. No, that's somebody else. Wrong guy. Okay, he's not here yet. Let's move on. Grumpy Old Mechanic. This is different. This one's different. This is talking about the Apollo missions, right? And the Apollo missions, we got photos of the Earth from way far. Those are the first photos of the Earth, and this was before the days of CGI. And what specifically he's calling out is that usually you'll just hear somebody, oh, it was faked. It was faked. It was faked. It was faked. In this case, they actually compare Apollo photos with weather reports, with the weather reports from the day, and using weather satellites, which are faked too, I guess, right? And so that's what I've got on here. Well, the weather satellites were clearly faked, and so they coordinated their efforts to fake the cloud pictures to be the same. That's what I got. And then, of course, you're going to ask, well, if the weather report is showing clouds in the sky that don't match the actual clouds in the sky, is anyone going to notice? Maybe no. Maybe they kept it vague enough, right? So that's what I've got on that one. If anyone has any further ideas. Okay, sunset. This is another one of the celestial sphere. Does not look like it's flat. It absolutely looks like a globe. Equatorial mounts, another one. Objects moving across the sky relative to where you are on the ground is consistent, 100% consistent with this globe stuff, and really hard to believe that there is some kind of atmospheric lensing or dome refraction. There's a dome up there that causes it to look like a sphere, even though it's flat. And you know, if you're a religious type, I always wonder. I really wonder. God did this. Why did God do this? Why, if God made the earth and he made it flat, why did God make it look round? What's going on with that, right? So either God made it round and made it look round, or God made it flat, but he wanted to trick us into thinking that it would be round. So that is odd. Okay, Suresh, what is that? Why is it flat? Does expect people to understand their model before debunking them and proceed not to understand any means? I would say a great many of, I'll put that up there. I think a great many of the flat earthers have gravitated to a new approach, which is to say we don't have a model. I think that's a way of saying making models is immoral. Making models is wrong. I think that's my best understanding of that. Honestly, I think the situation is that they know that that as soon as they present a model, as soon as you present a model, I will test it. That's what I can science that means. It means I can test that. It means I would like to show you that things are testable. And so if you missed, there you go. If you present me a model, you present a hypothesis, I would be happy to test the hypothesis. And the flat earthers know, many of them know that the leaders especially, they know that they don't want to be tested. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they don't want to be tested. So many of them have fallen back to, we don't have a model, and hoping, I guess, that will get them out of the issue. Okay, moving on. What else we got here? Middlewell. Here's some maps, some map questions. Speaking of maps, here's a map question on here, right here. And there's a handful of these. The map works as a globe, and you just can't make it work any other way. So what am I to think? What am I to think? Am I to think that the pilots don't notice that they're flying twice as far as the pilots don't know that they're flying twice as far as they think that they're flying, and they haven't noticed that they ran out of gas halfway over the Pacific Ocean, like Wile E. Coyote. As long as you don't notice, you can make it to your destination, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, I don't see any way other than map makers all fake it and they're in on it somehow, fooling us into this. So I think that's pretty solid. I really can't debunk that one. Reciprocal zenith angle measurement. Yeah, your typo. Fix it. I'll post it again. Okay. Yeah, reciprocal zeniths. This is different. This is a terrestrial observation. So this is not. Yeah, this is not celestial refraction. So the dome can't be doing it. This is just you look one way, you look the other way, and you level both your views, right? So you level your views with the local levelness. I'll avoid the G word here. Level with your levelness, and then look. They should be looking like at each other, but lo and behold, for some reason, they're looking like this. Right? They're always looking like this. So yeah. So the best explanation I've ever seen for that is that it's got to be refraction, or sometimes called optical drop. Unfortunately, if you actually look at how refraction works, refraction is not unknown. We mentioned before, you can measure refraction. You can measure it. And it goes the opposite direction under normal circumstances. Sometimes it can go up. Sometimes it can go down. Normally, it goes down. And optical drop is another one of those. Yeah, optical drop. If I could summarize optical drop in a word, that's an ad hoc. It's an ad hoc hypothesis. It's basically saying if the world is flat, mountains will obey the law of perspective in the distance. We observe that mountains do not obey the law of perspective, but in fact drop. They drop with distance. We observe that time and time again. Blackpool Tower, for example. We see it over and over again. Mountains drop with distance. So we're to the Earth is flat, but mountains drop with distance. That must mean that there's an unknown optical phenomenon that explains it. That we cannot replicate outside of certain people's kitchens. And that's a really interesting side tangent we could get into, is why do optics work differently in flat earth kitchens than they do in glober kitchens? I spent some time, you may remember, I spent some time with Rachel trying to really drill into that, trying to drill into why was it that optics in her home demonstration don't match optics in my home demonstration. Why is that? And if anyone has any thoughts about why that happened, I'd love to hear it. I think it's not at all a coincidence that that conversation ended, that we just never pushed it. I don't think that's a coincidence that happened. Okay. The horizon drops as you go up in altitude. I continue to hear that it does not. I continue to hear that on and on and on, that the horizon does not drop. Yeah, my glasses are fake. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, that could be it. You know, there's these glasses have, you know, lenses on them. And they distort things. Look at that. They're distorting things. Right. So maybe that's why. Yes, it's been very frustrating and disappointing for me as well. And I think that says something. I have decided that says something about the human psyche, about the mental condition of all of us. That I think what's happening is as soon as you get backed into a corner, I don't think it's deliberate for many of them. I think, though, as soon as you get backed into a corner where it's clear that something very fundamental, something very important to you is going to be lost, you'll stop. I think the mind knows. I think they know. I think at some level they know it's not going to work, and as soon as something in their mind makes that connection, we're not going there because they're not going to suffer that disappointment. Okay, direction towards the moon. If you haven't seen Joss Lee's animations, I think everyone's probably seen these animations. They're brilliant. They're beautiful. Very good. So yeah, really great visual way to show. Gosh, it sure looks like a globe. If it's flat, it sure looks like a globe, and it's hard. It's hard to imagine that it isn't. But that's one of those, celestial sphere type of explanations. Okay, during a lunar eclipse, yeah, this is a classic. This is old. The moon, the shadow of a lunar eclipse, the shadow cast upon the moon, if indeed it is a shadow, is always circular, which seems to indicate that whatever is casting that shadow must be a sphere, or very close to it. And then, well, you compare with the globe model, and you're like, oh, well, that thing casting the sphere is the Earth. So yes, this is evidence. One of the earliest pieces of evidence, in fact, documented. Ancient Greeks knew this. What the explanation for this is super sketchy, in my opinion. But if anyone's got better, let me know. They will tell you that the lunar eclipse is not caused by the Earth casting a shadow on the moon, and they're sure of that. The timing is perfect for it to be that, but it isn't that. I don't know, right? And what is it then? I don't know. It's a made up ad hoc thing that we have no way to test or verify. And that's a theme, by the way. A theme is that there's no way to know. I have no model, so therefore you cannot debunk me. Okay. Yep. Polaris. Again, same sort of thing. Celestial sphere. Okay, here's a good one. This is more of a map type of thing, I guess. If you travel in the same direction, you will end up in the same place, or you should get to the edge. So in other words, why can't we just go to the edge, right? Let's go to the edge. Usually this is, I think, the excuse is we can't go to the edge. And also, maybe there is no edge. Maybe it's just infinite, and NASA is hiding the resources of the worlds out there. Okay. Also, I put this one on here. I like this. This one always makes me giggle. because yeah, if you travel due east on the flat Earth map, you're just going in a little circle, right? And how many of you have heard that? You've heard that before, right? Right? You're just traveling in a circle, and the pilots just don't notice. Why don't the pilots notice that they're traveling in a little circle? Is it because the circle is so gradual that you can't feel it? Okay. So on the globe, the pilots have to be, you know, dipping their nose. They have to be traveling in this circle over the globe. Why can't they feel that? Anyone ever notice that before? That the flat Earth people are just adamant. I have to be able to feel that curving over the surface, but no one ever once commented that on the flat Earth when they're going around in a little circle that they should feel that too. Nope. Oh wow. Okay, airline routes. Speaking of airlines, airline routes. Gosh, the airlines are in on it, I guess. How deep does it go? The airlines are in on it. And even though there are alternate routes that would be cheaper, the airlines won't fly the alternate routes, and they fake their ranges. Apparently, they can fly very long ranges at incredibly high speeds, but only in the southern hemisphere. And they won't do it in the northern hemisphere, I guess because they're trying to cover it up. Gosh, that's tough. Yeah, and that's the out, right? As soon as you make a testable claim, we're going to test it. The test will fail, and then they say, no, that's not my claim. That's a straw man. That's a straw man, right? You're not allowed to test anything that I say. It's the it's the bottom line of it. Okay, Google Maps, another, the map makers have to be in on it. I don't see any other way around it. The map makers and anyone else who's checked it, you know, I don't know. All pilots are either, you know, they're kept silent somehow. Okay, another celestial sphere. This one's different. Intercept method. Spherical trigonometry. Yeah, you need spherical trig. But yeah, it's still celestial spheres. Aircraft flight plans. The flight planning software is based on globe. We know that. We've seen that. I guess they're in on it. Yeah, okay. Equinox sun angles. Yeah, this is back to the sun is not where they say it is. It doesn't look like it. So as long as we're doing this celestial sphere thing again, we're going to have to move. They don't just move up and down in the sky. They have to move north, south, east, west. Things move around in the sky. And I've always thought it really interesting that we would be, you know, making an ad hoc hypothesis that maybe the dome is causing this distortion, and the sun is doing its thing above the flat Earth, but it looks like it's doing its thing because of this distortion. And what I've always found really interesting is that this distortion manages to do its trick without changing the shape of anything ever. So constellations, as they distort throughout the day and throughout the year to get into this position, still have that same shape that they started with. Why? Isn't that incredible? Is that even possible? So are the sun and moon outside the dome? It's a really good question. Usually the answer you get at this point is we don't know. There's no way to know. And really, that's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to, I think, for a lot of them, is it's not so much that they want to prove that the sun is doing what they say it's doing. It's just that they want to prove that you don't know. I think that's what a lot of it comes down to is if they can just get you to the point where you say, I don't know, then they've won. Right? So that's where you get a lot of the arguments. A lot of the arguments are, yeah, well, don't worry, Sean, our guest still hasn't even shown up. I don't know if he's coming. So we're doing this instead. A lot of people will say things like, oh, well, the sun may not be a physical object. You don't even know what the sun is. How could you know the real distance to the sun? We show them the calculations. They don't care about that. If you can't touch it, it's not for sure. You can't know it. And there seems to be like a undercurrent through all of it is if I can't touch it, I can't know it. And I think they want us to concede that we don't know things, that we don't know what we know. Right. Okay. What else we got here? Yep. 15 degrees per hour. Mountains don't just shrink, they sink. Absolutely. So that's back to the optical drop, right? That's optical drop. All right. Yeah. Sun in the sky, the path is definitely appears to be moving in a conic circle or a conic section of some kind. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, this is a really good point. You're asking for logical consistency. There's a fellow I'm talking to right now about the horizon drop. Somebody that I know insists that the horizon rises to eye level, and I thought that we moved on from that. That most of the people in the flat Earth videos that I watch, I think, have moved on from the horizon rises to eye level. But yeah, the same person insists that that the sun, what it's doing, right? That the sun is not really crossing the horizon. Okay, so the sun is somewhere up above the horizon, and refraction or something is causing that light to scoop underneath and distort. And yet we think that the light from the distant horizon didn't do any scooping. It didn't, right? So the light from the sun obeys different rules from the light on the horizon. So yeah, if you've ever just thought about those two things together, like two of our main arguments, like the horizon drops with altitude and the sun crosses the horizon. So once you've accepted, even if you don't accept those, right? You say, no, the horizon always rises to eye level, which you hear a lot. And then you're like, well, what is the sun doing then? The explanation is usually, oh, it's, that it's refraction. It's refracting through the dome, right? So if that's refracting, then why isn't the rest of the light refracting? I don't get it. All right, more Joss Lee's. If you haven't watched his videos, go and watch them. His animations, beautiful. They're poetic. They're very straightforward. They show exactly the issues that we're talking about, which is that you have to imagine some really crazy refraction there, or you could just imagine it's a globe, and the globe just sorts it. Okay. Another one, the pattern of day and night. Yeah. Sun doesn't set, it just goes away for the night. Yeah, that's right. Ah, yes, there you go. That is what I've learned as well. That's what I've learned over these past 4 or 5 years now that I've been investigating this topic. I started my journey believing that flat earthers were just pulling my leg, that they weren't serious. And there are, statistics say there's quite a few out there that are not serious. But I have met enough of them now that I believe are serious. So I think some of the people that are flat earthers are serious. So then I guess the next thing I probably thought was, well, they're fools. They're dumb or something. And so then I went looking. I kept seeing, though, I kept seeing these scientists who would say, no, they're not dumb. They're not dumb. And I was like, oh, come on. How could they not be dumb? So I went and I looked at the scientists' papers. I went and looked at their papers and their research. And no, they're not really any dumber than the rest of the human population. They are pretty normal compared to the rest of us. And yeah, that started to shine a light on the fact that we all do this. We all of our minds actually do this to some extent. I think some people are more susceptible than others to this, but we all need to watch out for it, because I think we all do it a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I was having a discussion. It's on tangent time. I was having a discussion with a debunker, one of the debunkers in the community, but he was or is a bit of a climate change skeptic, we'll say, a bit, and yeah, that shocked me, that someone who is a flat Earth debunker has chosen the opposite, has made the opposite conclusions about something else scientific that I have. I just sort of assumed that, oh, if you're a debunker, then you must be believing mainstream science, and that's not true. So the thing that really struck home about that with me was when I immediately jumped to the assumption of political party affiliation. And the reason I would do that is because I have seen the patterns. The pattern is that we do put our political associations ahead of our critical thinking. We do, and there's been several studies that show that, and I think it's very obvious in the polling data. So yeah, we're all possible to do that. That's definitely correct. And 11th chimp, you think almost all of them are real. Motivated reasoning is incredibly powerful. It is. It is. I think very many of them are real. But statistically, we know that not all of them are real. I actually had this argument with a flat earther who insisted all flat earthers are genuine. And I was like, that's not possible. And he's like, no, I'm telling you, we're all real. Nobody fakes it. And so I just said, Shaq. He'd never heard of Shaq. But I said, Shaq. He was a famous basketball player who was on TV or Twitter or something. And he said, yeah, I think it's flat. And then a little while later, he said that he was just fooling around. So that leaves us with two possibilities. Two possibilities. Either he really believed it's flat and then pretended that he didn't, or he was pretending in the first place. So either way, he was pretending. So we know for a fact that there are pretenders. Okay. Question. Would it be safe to say that most flat earthers are from the USA? Actually, no. I don't think that's the case. I think that if we just look within the YouTube community that we're in, list all of the most prominent voices that you can think of, and then start checking off what country they come from. You'll find a great many of them are UK folks. Yeah, a very, very large number are UK folks. There are a few from Australia and New Zealand. And I think the biggest effect here that we're seeing now, I've listed UK, USA, Australia, New Zealand. English is their primary language in all of those. And the reason that they look so popular to us is because we consume English language media. We consume the English language YouTubes. There was a poll a few years back that really shook me about how many flat earthers there are in Brazil. Does anyone remember that one? That in Brazil, it was like 7% of the population or something just crazy. Yeah, but I don't watch any Brazilian YouTubers, so maybe I would never know, right? So yeah, my gut tells me that the maximum per capita is the UK, because there are some very prominent folks in UK that I can think of, and really only a handful of Americans. In at least in the circles that I watch. Okay, what else we got on here? Gravity. Finally, gravity appears on here. And of course, the rebuttal is that gravity doesn't exist. Yeah, I would, at some point, I would love to have just a serious talk with someone who was serious about investigating something like this. You've seen the Cavendish experiment. We saw Blue Marble Science doing it over and over and over. Are we supposed to believe that that was fake? The excuses that are made, the thing I want to get away from is, let's get away from the excuses. Right? The excuses are, that's a man-made experience and therefore it's not science. It's a man-made machine and therefore that experiment is not science. What does that got to do with anything? That doesn't mean anything. Those things were sucked together, and right? So let's stop making excuses and let's just look at it. Were those things sucked together? Yes, they were sucked together. Do all things get sucked together? I've seen many other tests, and Blue Marble even did it with like some Coca-Cola. Like, so Coca-Cola is attracted to lead. Lead is attracted to lead. I've seen sand attracted to water, bowling balls to concrete, right? You can do it with lots of different things. So we know that this happens, and they just want to go back to no, it doesn't. I don't see how you can do that. Okay, here's a satellite photo. Of course, we know that they faked those photos. Yeah, satellites. You can look up and see the satellites with a telescope, especially, but you don't even need a telescope. If you live in a nice dark area, you're out in the countryside, you can go up and look and see the satellites. So what do we got to explain that? I think the most common one is they're all balloons. Satellites are balloons. So a geostationary satellite is a balloon that hovers in place for years at a time. I've also heard this one. This one always makes me really kind of smile, is the supposition that there are satellites, there are vehicles, man-made vehicles up in the sky, but they use a technology, a secret technology, to hover up there. It's a secret technology that they would not tell us how it works. I saw one guy who was trying to tell me it was an electrostatic force or something that they use up there. And I was just sort of smiling and go, if they have all that technology, why, you believe, like you're willing to believe that they have this amazing technology that can cause something to hover, but you're not willing to believe that rockets work in space. It's just, okay. All right. Yep. This is more atmospheric lensing. It's refraction from the dome. Oh, yeah, this is a good one, but yeah, same sort of thing. This is optical drop again. Optical drop is my explanation for why we see a horizon at all. So on a clear day, we get these photographs of ocean horizons that are crisp and clear. And sometimes you even see the sun setting behind that horizon. So we know there's nothing between the sun and the viewer, right? There's no more land, there's no more water in that spot. It's not hidden by something. So it's got to be optical drop. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's got to be optical drop. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Although really it is self-consistent if you think about it. I'm going to send a little note to our guest. Okay. It actually is self-consistent if you think about it, though. If it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I have decided that the main thrust of the flat Earth mentality is not the positive assertion that it is flat. I think that's extremely secondary for most of them. I think the motivation is that the mainstream narrative is incorrect. The mainstream narrative is a lie, I think, is the main thrust of all of this. And so this narrative of super secret unknown technology is completely consistent with that. Like, just regular old science textbook science, that's wrong. But completely fanciful, made up sci-fi technology, yeah, we believe that. Yeah, so NASA is technologically capable of anything, but not spaceflight. Well, there's no space. Most of them say there is no space. Okay, spherical excess. That's a map making one. I will say I don't know enough. And here's a good one: the spherical excess. If you guys know about spherical excess, if you do, what do you call it? Survey. If you do a survey, geodetic survey from one location to another, mountaintop to mountaintop, and you triangulate you make a triangle. The angles between them should be 180 degrees. Now, in order to make it not be 180 degrees, I guess light is refracted sideways. Light is refracted sideways in both ways. Is that an explanation? I don't see how that's even really an explanation. I think they just have to fake it. If anybody knows any other explanations for that. Okay, distances in the southern hemisphere, and a rather long explanation. The best one I ever saw for that one is the, I forgot who did it. If somebody knows, shout it out. It was runways throughout the world. And so they got the latitude and longitude at the beginning and ending of runways, some pointed north-south, some north-south, some pointed east-west, all throughout the world, and then charted what is the size of a latitude and longitude, because they also have the length of the runway is published. It's publicly published, right? So what is the size of the runway? What is the latitude and longitude? And then they plotted that throughout the world as like, oh, well, look like it's a sphere. Okay. Doesn't have to be refracted sideways. So 11th chimp, how could we make spherical excess happen if it's not a sideways thing? We go 3 points and we just check the azimuth angle between them, not the elevation angle, right? Because I know refraction is gonna occur in the elevation angle, but in the azimuth angle, we don't expect there to be any particular refraction occurring there. So if I measure the angles on all 3, if it's flat, I should get 180 degrees. But if it's convex, I should get greater than 180 degrees. And they do get greater than 180 degrees. So how does that happen? I don't know. I got nothing. Okay, and that's my list so far. So yeah, the plumb lines are leaning away from each other, of course. But how can the Earth still not be anything other than a sphere and have that occur? I'm kind of stumped. So was it? Am I wrong about that one? Me calling it spherical excess probably wasn't accurate on that one. This is yours. You tell us. What was that about? I thought I just glanced at it. I thought this was the spherical excess one. It was along a line just that shorter chords add up to more than one long chord. Oh, I see. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. All right. I should correct that then. Let's say, shorter chords add up to more than one long chord. And how do we explain that one? Could that be explained by refraction? Yeah, I'm going to say refraction will explain that, right? Somehow. So spherical excess remains missing. Okay, no one has suggested spherical excess. Right, distances. Okay, so no one has suggested spherical excess that's on the list. That's not on the list. If you guys want to take it, what else is not on here? There's some really easy ones that are not on here, like satellite TV, satellite radio, satellite phones. How's that work? I think the usual answer is they don't work. That's a lie. Or it's unknown technology. Okay, what else? What else do I like? I think it was Joss Lees did the distances between cities. Just line them up and take four cities far enough apart and try to get the distances. Make a map. In other words, just make a map. What I like to call the Tiger Dan approach. Does anyone know Tiger Dan? You guys know the story of Tiger Dan? I miss Tiger Dan. Pick 4 cities and try to plot them to scale with the correct distances. That's right. And yeah, Joss Lees has a great video on that. I think it's Joss. It doesn't work. So yeah, those are some good ones. What else is suspiciously absent from here? I don't know. I think there was some more. Compasses was a good one. Compasses are made different. I didn't know this. I learned this from Greater Sapient. Compasses are made differently for different parts of the world, and they're tilted. Yeah, maybe you could just transmit across the flat plane. It's an interesting, yeah. Tiger Dan, I loved that story. His YouTube channel appears to be gone now. I was very sad about that because I would go back and watch it. It was hours of content, but I would go back and watch his journey because it was a beautiful journey. Tiger Dan started off a convinced flat earther, and he set upon the goal of making an accurate. He'd heard it one too many times. Where's your map? Where's your map? And he said, I'm gonna make a map. And so he did this. He used airline data to estimate. Yeah, let me tell you, because this is a beautiful story. It's beautiful. I wish the videos were still there. So he started out very cocky. He was going to make a map. He was going to use airline data to establish the distances between cities. And then he would use that like a jigsaw puzzle to place the land masses where they had to be, right? So he scaled, he started in Europe, and he scaled his little, took a map of Europe and he put that onto an image, and he scaled it so that, the distances are all pretty much correct. And then he's like, okay, now we're going to put in North America. So he goes from like London to New York is this distance. And like, I don't know, say Madrid to Tampa is this distance. And so with that, he's able to arrange North America and Europe so that they're in the right place relative to each other. And he was super proud of himself. And then he goes around the other side, and he goes across Asia, includes Japan, and he gets the whole Northern Hemisphere pretty much done. And he was very proud of himself. He did it in a series of videos as he was working on it. And then he tried to take on the Southern Hemisphere. And it didn't work. He couldn't get the Southern Hemisphere to work. If he put the correct distances going one way, the other way would be way wrong. And so then he tried it, he rearranged things all kinds of different ways. And then he got a stroke of genius. He realized, what if he turns this whole thing upside down? And he made a new map. He started over with Antarctica in the middle, with the South Pole in the middle. And then the North was around the outside. And oh my God, I used to just love staying up late at night and watching, because it was beautiful. And so he did that. And then sure enough, Antarctica's in, Australia's in, South America, Africa, they're in. And he's like, okay, this is the secret. This is what we've had wrong, guys. And then he goes and he tries to put in Europe and North America, and now they don't work. And then something really, really, really magical happened. Is he went back to his flat Earth community. In his next video, he said, guys, I can't make this work. I know the Earth is flat, but I can't make a flat Earth map. It can't be done, he says. You can't make a map. And I don't have any explanation for this. I know the Earth is flat, but you can't make a flat map. And he got a lot of pushback from his community. They didn't like hearing that. So in his next video after that was, he had announced a 10-part series of making the map, and he was on like video 6 was the one where he said it doesn't work. And then the next video he did after that was one where he showed photos of tourists in Australia. I'm sorry, not Australia, Antarctica. He discovered that Antarctica was real, and that there's videos of people who go there to play music in Australia for no apparent reason other than, I'm sorry, I keep saying Australia, Antarctica, for no apparent reason other than just to be tourists. And he was very angry all of a sudden that he had been told that Antarctica was fake and that you couldn't go there, and that, you know, NASA would prevent you from going there, and there's armed guards in the Antarctic Treaty. He was told that. And when he just went and he just looked at the cruises and the airlines that fly over it and the photos, videos, and he said there's thousands of them. And he was very angry that his community had not been honest with him about that. But at that point, he was still a flat earther, right? He still believed it was flat, but he was angry at his community. And then the very next video he did after that was exposing the lies of flat earth, where he now knew that the earth was not flat and that he had been lied to about all of it. And he was very angry about it. And so then he had a couple of those videos, and then he just went dark and he stopped posting. So it was a wonderful journey to see him start from, I'm going to prove it, and then go through that process and come to the only proof that you inevitably can get, which is that you can prove it's false. Yeah. And then it was a few months ago, I think it was beginning of the summer, I wanted to link it to somebody. You know, somebody asked the question, do flat earthers ever go back to the globe? Do they ever do this? And I wanted to say, yeah, here's Tiger Dan. But I found his videos are gone. So they lied to him. Yeah, what the irony of the end of the story is that he discovered who was lying to him, that he was being lied to. And this is the thing. Flat Earth is all about, it's all lies. They're lying to us. And that's true. People lie. People are lying to you all the time. But I would say Tiger Dan's story was that he discovered that the they wasn't NASA. The they was the flat earth channels that he was very close to, that he believed in. Yeah, I miss it. Somebody maybe does have it. When did this, how many years ago? It was already old news when I started down this path, and that was 2016. So he, yeah, it was, when did it happen? I think it was already, it had already completed the journey as of 2016 when I first discovered this flat earth story. And somebody pointed me to Tiger Dan and answered to the question, does anyone ever change their mind? They pointed me to Tiger Dan. So I watched it and I just loved it. Did he take up geocentrism? Yes, for a very short period of time, 2, maybe 3 videos he did were calling out the lies of the flat earthers. And he was, my understanding was that he was still very much still a young earth creationist. He still believed in most of what he believed from before, just not the flat earth. The flat earth was the only one that I think that he had rejected, at least at that time. And then he went dark. So, and that's really too bad. I hope he's found peace somewhere, you know, in all of that, that topsy-turvy thing that went down. Yeah. I thought that, I'm hoping to have Ranty on someday and ask him some these types of hard questions. I don't think Ranty fully understands this. I haven't heard him completely just really embrace this, but Ranty couldn't see. He would repeatedly film wind turbines that are underwater. Over and over, he'd film wind turbines underwater, and he'd show that, and he'd say, look at the glorious flat Earth. Look at the flat Earth. And we're all looking at it going, no, but he couldn't see. He literally could not see it until he was ready to see it. And he couldn't be ready to see it until he stepped away. As soon as Ranty stepped away and he pushed back and he gave his channel to Brandon for a while, as soon as he was separated from it, then he was ready. And it took some time. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's my list. That's my list, and I don't think we have any flat earthers here today, which is too bad. I would love to hear somebody try to defend these ideas better than I have. My defense is sort of a straw man kind of thing. I'm doing my best to give it an honest shake. But, you know, it's really thin. We have a long list of evidence on the globe Earth side. We have almost no evidence on the flat Earth side. Ultimately, there was one piece of evidence that I'm willing to grant for flat Earth that is legitimately, you could call it evidence. And that is the long distance observations very close to the surface. Would anyone like to talk about lasers over water? You want to talk about lasers or other light close to the surface? Yeah. Yeah, I watched that one as well. For what it's worth, Brandon was polite. He was nice about it, and I appreciate that. Yeah. Starting with beam dispersion. Okay, beam dispersion is an interesting thing there. I do think I've seen some debunkers talk about beam dispersion as if that's an explanation, but it's missing half the problem, right? Beam dispersion, the laser spreads. It spreads a little bit, so it becomes wider at the other end, and maybe the width is more than the drop, right? Okay, fine, but a spreading beam is not a curving beam, right? A spreading beam does not explain all by itself how you can have a laser go over that kind of distance. Let me move this down so I'm not right behind the banner. The laser going over that kind of distance should have intersected the curve, and even if it is spreading, the curve should clip those off, right? But and if you've ever watched, if you're aware of Mick West, I think Mick West is a pretty big name in this market. He has a lovely simulator that shows, and he has a video with it where he explains that that the refraction causes the beam to curve, and then your initial response would be, what's the Star Trek thingy? That's, I mean, right here, right there. That's not Star Trek, actually. It's some video games. It's a collection of video games from Annapurna Interactive. They do some pretty kick-ass like indie games. Anyway, yeah. So the beam dispersion, the refraction, your response would be, isn't it amazing that the refraction is exactly the amount it needs to cover the curve, right? So that would be pretty amazing if the refraction was exactly that amount. That would be pretty coincidental. I would have trouble believing that. However, when you add beam dispersion to that, you find that the bottom of the beam is refracting too much. and the top of the beam is refracting not enough. And so that means that somewhere in the beam, there is a line that is refracting the exact amount that you want. So that's how dispersion helps to explain that. But anyway, they have lots of these observations, and I think they're good ones. I think they're good evidence. If I saw a video like that and I didn't look at any of the debunking, I think I'd probably be pretty convinced. I think I'd believe it, right? I mean, don't look at the debunking, and that's the key. They don't look at the debunking. According to you, who might be the next flat earther eternally? According to me, I don't know. I think it's always a surprise. It's always a surprise to me when someone does, because it is frankly so very rare for anyone to change their mind about this. Yeah. So who might be next? I watched Ranty and Katz talking about that, and I think they suggested somebody. Who did they suggest? Anyone watch that one? They thought maybe, I think they said Bob. Didn't they say Bob? Bob from Globebusters? They thought was maybe, yeah, okay. Astro Rex says maybe Brandon. Now that he's inherited Ranty's channel. Yeah, and then I thought Rachie would make it, says Sarav. Looking at a recent journey, I would bet on it. No. Rachie's not on the fence at all. She's very decided. Yeah, this was a good one. I saw that demo. It was really cool. He did a demo. If you haven't seen, it's worth a watch. He just shot a laser across his backyard, and then he moved a tray of ice underneath the laser and showed that caused the beam to deflect, and moved the tray of ice out and it deflects back. So that was all it took. I was pretty impressed. It was a really good demo. Yeah, I think this comes back to what I was saying before. Is I think most of them really, frankly, I don't think they care about the Earth being flat. I think they are really driven. They are really driven that we are lied to by the government. That's, I think, for many of them, most of the ones that I have talked to personally have expressed that very clearly, that if you drill down to why do you think it's true? Why do you think the Earth is flat? And they'll say, because NASA lies, the moon landings were faked. They had a Nazi, von Braun was a Nazi, and they brought him over here. Right? This is the focal point of many of them, many of their feelings about it. So they don't care about optical drop or 15 degrees per hour. They know that they were lied to, and that's what they're invested in. Yeah. Semantics is a big one with many of them, because it allows them to deflect the conversation away from the concrete, objective facts. Like if you want to talk about the black swan image, the concrete, objective facts are, it does not happen every day. Therefore, it is an inescapable conclusion that refraction is playing a part in what we're seeing. And then they want to jump to, therefore it's flat, right? They want to go straight into, I just debunked your model, and I got you to admit that it's not a physical thing. I'm like, who said it was? Who said that there's no refraction, right? Haven't we been trying to argue for that there is refraction for the past, I don't know, decade? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Don't like to use the word flirfs on the channel, because we had a flat earther on here and we asked, hey, how do you feel about that term? And he seemed to think that that the term was derogatory. I want them to be welcome here. I have this dream. I have a dream that we'll have flat earthers come on and have honest, straightforward discussions where we don't get into semantic arguments. But yeah, so yeah, there are definitely different categories. They're not all the same. Some of them are very religiously driven, and some of them are very conspiracy driven. That's true, and some of them are both. Well, yeah. So one last email to our supposed guest for tonight. Last call. I'm going to shut down the stream soon. Boom. Flat Earth proponents. I don't know. I just put FEs. Just put FE. FE is good. FE is not offensive. Because, yeah, I mean, here we are. It probably sounds like I've been bashing on them the whole time. I don't want that. I want them to be on here, and yeah, I want them to come on here and disagree with me and come and explain to me why. Yeah, we could talk about, I hate to straw man the whole debunk of gravity, but he had a couple of points. The first point that we started from was that all forces must have resistance. You cannot have a force without resistance, was his exact quote. You have to have a force. In order to have a force, what did he say? Can a force exist without resistance? What does that mean, resistance? I speculated. I tried to offer him, does he mean Newton's third law, action and reaction? Does he mean that for every force is an equal and opposite force? And perhaps he's thinking, maybe he's thinking that when you drop something, you drop an apple, it accelerates towards the earth. If there was a real force, the earth would have to be accelerated up towards the apple with an equal and opposite force. And I think that most people don't realize that the earth is accelerated upwards towards the apple with equal and opposite force. That, yeah, it absolutely is. That's what the equations say. That's what happens. It's just that the mass of the earth is significantly larger than the mass of the apple. Yeah. So I don't know. But then he denied it. He said, no, that's not it. It's air resistance. He was insistent that it had to be air resistance. So my next comment to him was, what about magnets? Does a magnet attract an iron bar with a force? And he said, yes, that's a force. And so I was like, I don't understand. How is a magnet attracting an iron bar a force, but the earth attracting an apple is not a force? And he insisted, again, it's because it only happens that in both cases, it happens because of the air, that the air around the magnet is part of how this happens. So I think, now that I'm thinking about it, I think that he's saying you can't have action at a distance. You cannot have force over distance. There has to be a connection, a physical connection. And he thinks that the air is providing that physical connection, I think. Yeah. And so that's what I said. I was like, okay, so if you think that's the case, put a magnet in a vacuum chamber and hook it up with a little strain gauge so that you can measure the force of attraction. And then pump the air down and see if the amount of attraction varies according to the amount of pressure in the medium. He also insisted that there's no such thing as a perfect vacuum because you can never suck all of the air out. Right? So, yeah, again, I think his answer is that that you can't suck the air all out. I'm not sure, though, because I really didn't understand this. I'm doing my best. Doesn't seem like he's coming. Okay, so then ultimately he moved on to this one. Sneezies. So does buoyancy debunk gravity? He thinks he brought up the old, if gravity were real, helium balloons wouldn't float. I think that's the general thing. People say this. We hear it pretty often. It's not totally unique. And I go back to this one. I say, can science explain buoyancy? Are you trying to suggest? I asked somebody yesterday, I think, are you trying to tell me that scientists are not aware that helium balloons float? That in science class, that there isn't a single nerd student anywhere in the science class who said, excuse me, professor, why do helium balloons float? And at that point, as soon as I asked the question, we saw the usual, which is don't want to answer those questions anymore. So we're gonna, yeah. The only answer I got yesterday was a joke about how the scientists are all fools, but it was clearly a joke. He wasn't serious, and then he wouldn't go any further. I think the correct answer here, if I may interject, the correct answer here is that science does explain it, and the person in question doesn't know what that explanation is. And I think that sums it right up, that science does have an explanation for buoyancy, and presumably young Kali doesn't know what that explanation is. And so when he sees the balloon floating, he says gravity is wrong because that doesn't match my understanding of what gravity is saying. And that's the thing. And that's the thing. If you think that your observations, sum it up, you think your observations don't match mainstream science. I want you to ask yourself, is it believable that no mainstream scientist has ever noticed that before? Are you honestly the first person to notice that a helium balloon floats? Clearly no. So how believable is it to you that no mainstream scientist, science teacher, science student, textbook editor, any of these people has ever caught this obvious fallacy. And that's where it's a sure sign you're deep down the rabbit hole. If your mind immediately goes to, I have debunked 1,000 years of science because I saw a balloon. You're deep in the rabbit hole. And speaking of deep in the rabbit hole, there was a great tweet from, I think it was a tweet, great post from Arnold Schwarzenegger. Did you guys see that last week? Where he said, something like, when you find that the circle of people you trust, the group of people you trust is shrinking, that's a red flag. You should be aware that means you've fallen down the rabbit hole. So I thought that was really a wonderful thing for him to say. So we got a new topic. What's going on? We're talking about anthropogenic climate change. Yeah, we don't have any flat earthers here, but we have some climate change debate, perhaps. We have record temperatures and a lot less CO2 than today. Yeah. It doesn't seem like anyone's arguing, though. It's the rate of change. Yeah, that makes it. Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that, including Richard. Let me put it up there. In the 20s and 30s, we have record temperatures and less CO2. Oh, okay. Right. That one. Okay. Yeah, sure. Sure. We have high temperatures and less CO2. Right. So first of all, you're agreeing we have more CO2. So that's good. So we know that's factual and we can agree on that. Richard, if you're still on, are you still on with us? I don't want to debate. I don't want to debate this, but I would like to ask you some questions. So in the 20s and 30s, we have record temperatures. Are you saying that in the 20s and 30s, it was hotter than it is today? Is that what you're saying? If you are saying that, my next question would be, yes. Okay, great. Richard says, yes. Okay. How would you go about validating that claim? Because that is clearly a claim that many people don't agree with. So it seems like that is worth doing a little test of some kind, testing it out to validate. Do you have any suggestions, Richard, for how we could go about testing that claim? Is that claim true? What would be the criteria we might want to check for? Like this was the exact same thing that was brought up with me on a live stream some time ago, and I posited average global temperature. Was the average global temperature higher in the 20s and 30s than it is today? So Richard, would you say, according to your data that you're referring to, do you think the average global temperature was higher in the 20s and or 30s than it is today? I'll interject with a bit of a joke here. Were the people hotter in their 20s and 30s? Oh, when the people were 20s and 30s. Oh, yeah, okay. I'll go along with that. You got me there, Jeza. Yeah. I think I definitely, although I'm going to say, I think I probably hit peak hotness at about 16. And it was all downhill from there. That was just me, though. I never really approached hotness anyway. So, Richard, what do you think? Is my statement a fair assessment of what you are asserting, that the average global temperature in the 20s or 30s was greater, was higher than it is today. Is that what you were saying? Again, I'm not debating you. I'm asking. If that's what you're saying, then that would seem to be a really strong piece of evidence against anthropogenic climate change. Okay, so anyways, that's what I would do. That's what I would do. Richard, if you're still there, or if anyone else is curious, that's what I would do. Is I would say, first, I would come up with an objective way to assess this. So my objective way of assessing this is global average temperature, not the highest temperature on any given day of the year. That doesn't seem fair. I want an annual, I think, or at least maybe a month. No, I want an annual. I want like a whole year, the average temperature, and it's got to be the whole globe. I don't want to just know. So Richard says, I guess that would be true if the temperature records are higher. I don't know what that's in response to. Not sure. So what I would say is, what was the average global temperature for a year? Was there any year in the period of the 20s or 30s where the average global temperature over any year was higher than, say, last year? Or, you know, let's see that. That would seem to be an objective measure, as opposed to, like, for example, if I just said the town of Columbus, Ohio, had record temperatures on August 23rd of 1934. I don't know, right? I'm just making this up. I'm just making that up. If that was your data point, I would say that's not, it's not important, right? That doesn't mean anything. So I would say, yeah, go and find what was the average global temperature and come back. And so that's critical thinking, right? We're being critical of everything we're told, right? We're told that the temperature is going up. So I'm going to be critical on that. Let's check it. And also, when you were told, and I think I know the source that you're referring to, actually, Richard, you were told that, I think it was actually the 30s, if it's the one that I've seen, that it was hottest summer. The hottest summer on record was in the 30s. This is what I was told before. And so I went and I looked at it, and it was true. It was true. The hottest summer on record in the continental United States was in the 30s. At the time, I think we've surpassed it now, I think, haven't we? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that was true for what it's worth. Or I think it was the hottest month. It was specifically a month. And then you got to ask, why are we only doing the continental United States? Why are we only doing a particular month? Right, and so there's a comment I want to highlight. I don't want it to be mean, though. We tend not to. People, let's recognize it. We tend not to check sources that we trust. Did we have recording stations all over the globe in the 20s and 30s? I think that we did. I think we did. Yeah, I think you should check it out. And another one of the things you'll find, I think the next thing I would want to ask is, once I've found my data and I'm looking at this data, I would want to ask, just straight up ask, what's the other side say? What are both sides? Let's see both points of view. I want to see what are the one who told you the original thing, what is their claim, and what are the other people claiming about this? How do they explain it? Again, I'm going to come back to the, are you telling me, Richard, are you telling me that the climate scientists of today are not aware that the 30s was hotter? Or are you telling me that the climate scientists of today are lying? Which is it? Or perhaps there's a third option, which is the climate scientists of today know something that you don't know. Maybe you should go and find out what they have to say about this, because it could be, let me speculate here with a smirk on my face. It could be that they're going to tell you that they had to do a major recalibration of old data because they discovered that the old data was gathered in a way that had a systematic error to it that made it appear much warmer than it really was. And once they discovered that and they corrected for it, the findings changed. That you might find that was an explanation, and then you could add that into your little list of things that people say, right? So maybe that happened, right? What if those, it was 100 years ago now, right? The 20s was 100 years ago. So yeah, for instance, maybe they were hanging their thermometers behind the boat, and maybe the water behind boats is hotter than the water normally is. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, what if it was that, right? So they would maybe need to correct for that. So yeah, it's not a debate. It is an exercise in critical thinking. And that's why I want to highlight, have you ever tested this claim? Because I think we don't. I think when I hear a trusted spokesperson come out and say something, somebody comes out and says, oh, global warming is real, and we're all gonna sink, and the polar bears are all gonna die, or whatever they say, right? And if that's somebody that I trust, and they're giving me a message that I already believe in, do I go and check their papers? Come on, how many of you have ever checked any of this, right? No, I just believe them, right? And so what has happened is that we have sort of chosen different groups of people to grant our trust to. And that makes sense. I mean, we can't go through life if we have to check every little claim, every little claim. I'd be paralyzed, right? If I had to check every little claim. So I can't. Instead, I trust people that I have come to trust. How does a source become trusted? And that's the magic of it. And that's the magic of it, is we all have to choose our own trusted sources, right? And we don't all choose in the same way. You say years of reliable reporting. Great. So if I watch MSNBC and you watch Fox News for years, and they seem reliable. So years of reliable reporting that don't agree with each other. And then we end up with very different trusted sources. Yeah. So what I like to propose is, in all things, I am going to go with the best evidence available to me at this moment. So For example, the national and international organizations, the IPCC, for example, NOAA, NOAO, whatever it is, the National Ocean one, whatever they say, I'm going to default to, they know more than me. I'll just go with whatever they say. When it's NOAA. Thank you, Rusty. Thank you. Yes. National Oceanography, something, I don't even remember. Professional scientists who make it their job to know this material. They know it better than me. I'm not going to second guess them. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm not going to finish there, but if somebody then comes forward with some halfway credible counter claim, I'm going to look at the claim before I accept that alternate claim. I think that's a reasonable way of getting through my life. We do hear from at least a segment of the flat earthers that they want to prove everything. You can't prove it. You can't prove it. You can't prove it. And they're just really happy with that. I think many of them, that's their main goal. Astro Rex, yeah, you and I do not believe that the Globebusters are a reliable source. When the Globebusters say, hey, look, there's a second sun, right? There's two suns in the sky. Only one of them's invisible. There's two suns. One of them's invisible, but the telescope can see it. And there's two suns. Your eye can only see one, but the telescope can see the other one. For reasons. Okay, when they say that, and there are people who believe it, right? People who believe it, and we don't believe that. But how many of us maybe believe that anthropomorphic climate change isn't real? I'd say that there's a significantly larger group of us that believe that. And others of us believe that human beings are going to be extinct in 20 years because of climate change. I've seen that. I've seen people say that. Again, my default position is they must be joking. But if I've learned a lesson from the flat earthers, maybe they're not. So we are doing the same things. Wherever you fall on your belief spectrum, because we see it's not unanimous, right? Because we see that beliefs are not unanimous, we know for a fact somebody has trusted unreliable sources. We don't know necessarily who that is. There was some additional context to that 20 years that omitted or didn't understand. I'm thinking of a particular tweet from an American congressman, an American congressperson, who that person later said it was satirical, I think. What it was hyperbole. It was hyperbole, unabashed hyperbole is what it was. But that was a trusted person, right? It was a national congressperson, and it's a trusted person that should not be using that kind of hyperbole. They should know better, because people will believe them. People will think that. Yeah. So I think that's where I keep coming back to, is we're all victims of the same kind of cognitive biases. We should watch out watch out for that. And yeah, and the best way to watch out for it is, spot checks when it's important. Spot check when it's important. And the worst one, the one the one I really am focused on more than any other is the in-group, out-group cultural cognition. They call it cultural cognition, when you choose your trusted group and you just do whatever that group says without questioning it. So if your group is very worried about climate change, if your in-group, your political group, your friends, your family, the TV shows you watch, if they are into that, then you are probably into it. And honestly, I don't think most of us have any good evidence for that. Most of us have not read the papers, right? We're not qualified. Most of it, we're not qualified to know, right? On the other hand, if your in-group is not behind anthropomorphic climate change, you will find the claims to be alarmist. You'll say, oh, those alarmists, right? Scientific papers are boring. Yeah, they are. They are super dry. Oh my God. And then the opposite problem, Dumb Jez, the opposite problem I think is worse, which is the popular science press is extremely, what's the word I'm looking for here? Just super unreliable, super fake. It's just super fake. The science, the popular science stuff, super fake. Don't believe anything in there. So yeah, and it's a problem. Let's see. No response from young Kali. Looks like he's not coming. All right. So I was going to sort of wrap it up with proving things. We don't prove things. You can't ask for proof. You can't ask for proof before you take action. For example, I'm planning to brush my teeth tonight. I hope many of you also are toothbrushers. I do not have specific experience with which to judge that, and it has been proven to me that brushing my teeth will improve the health of my teeth. I'm going to use toothpaste when I do that. I'm going to take these chemicals and I'm going to put them in my mouth. So what proof do I have that this is going to improve anything? I don't ask for proof of that, because the available evidence is proof enough, right? Unless I have good reason to question it, and then we'll dig in, right? So that's how I think we should all judge things and move forward with life. Is you think the Earth is flat? I'll tell you what, it looks flat. It looks flat. So if I don't know any better, I'm going to start from there. I'm going to start from, it looks flat. I see no reason to think otherwise, until somebody tells me, well, hey, here's some evidence. And then they give me a pile of 30 some odd pieces of evidence. I don't even need 30. They just give me one. Hey, look at the sunset. Look at the sunset. Look what it's doing. Think about that for a minute. That doesn't look flat. So now that's enough evidence for me to at least look into it. Is it proof? No, it's not proof. It's not proof. We don't prove things. But we're not looking for proof. We're just looking for, what does the evidence say? The evidence says, and we just went through the list today, the evidence is strongly in favor that the Earth is a globe. The Earth appears to be round. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that. And the counter evidence is not, that evidence is not proof. So if you're the kind of person who says, I'm sticking with what I think, despite all this evidence because it hasn't been proven, then I think that that's a very bad way, an unwise way to behave. We should go with whatever the best evidence we have is. So if you think anthropomorphic climate change is not real, I'm going to ask you to show the evidence, right? You have evidence for that, and can we weigh it against evidence saying that it is real? And then we can all make an informed decision. But be very, very careful of just accepting what your in-group says about something without evidence. I think my way of doing this is maybe kind of offensive to the flat Earth people, which is I'm going to go with the mainstream. If there is a profession of dentists, there's a profession called dentist who makes their living. They study teeth. They study the science of teeth. They practice on teeth. They practice the study of teeth. They do this. Whatever that group says, I'm going with that. Whatever that group says, I'm going with that, unless you show me evidence otherwise. Yeah, so my dentist tells me to brush my teeth, so brush and floss, so I do. Okay, if you've got strong evidence that that's not correct, let's look at that. So similarly, climate change. The climate scientists, are they unanimous? No, they're not unanimous. Are they virtually unanimous? Yes, yes, I've checked. I've checked. Do they have a strong tendency towards, yes, anthropomorphic climate change is real? That's what they say. There are some dissenting voices, but am I going to say that, 10 dissenting voices compared to 90 consensus voices, is that a strong enough reason to choose which is the better evidence? 10 people say this or 90 people say this, so okay, and then it's not proof. So no, I'm not claiming that that's proof. Don't tell me that's a logical fallacy. It would be a logical fallacy for me to call that proof. What it is, though, is me going with the best available data that I have, unless I'm willing to challenge that data. Yeah. Yeah, and they were talking now about some people don't believe in fluoride when we were very afraid of fluoride. It's the same stuff. So despite what I choose, I think that what we're understanding about flat Earth and these other anti-mainstream movements is that they are specifically anti-mainstream. And I think that's also somewhat true of the climate change discussion. The idea is that all these scientists and these groups tell me that it's this way, and I don't like those groups. I don't like those people, so I don't want that to be true. So I go with what my group says. At the same time, particularly if Richard, if you're still in here, let me emphasize that for every climate change skeptic in the world, I'm convinced there is a climate change alarmist in the world to counterbalance you. there are people who think it's way more than it is. There, people say we're all going to be, humans are going to be extinct in 20 years or whatever. We won't have grandchildren or that kind of thing. No, no scientist is saying that. Or, I don't know, this island is sinking because of climate change or whatever. And it's like, do you actually have a quote from an actual scientist that actually says that? So watch out for that. My brother-in-law told me something, so I checked it, and he was right that the leading scientists in the field think that the polar bear population is probably increasing. Polar bears aren't going extinct. That's not happening. That's not a thing. Not right now, at least. So how many of us thought polar bears are going extinct? I thought it. I thought that was definitely a thing. So I went and I checked, and what I found led me to change my conclusion that no, I don't think polar bears are going extinct. Right, but we I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Who knows? Yeah. You find out the islands they're showing are sinking faster than average sea level rise, right? Because the scientists know that the island. Whoops. Oh, keep missing. The scientists are talking about islands that are sinking, and they may even say, and with climate change, it's making it even worse. And then the popular science press takes that and turns that into climate change is erasing these islands. And the scientist is like, that's not what I said, but nobody listens. Nobody listens to them. I don't know about polar bears being culled at any point or extensively hunted. I don't know that. What I found was scientists who study polar bear populations telling us that they don't really have that good account of the number of polar bears. They don't really know the exact number, but they're getting better numbers on it, and the numbers are growing. And they said, and we have no real evidence to say that they're going extinct. That's all the guy would say. Is an island sinking really erosion? Yes, it's erosion. It depends on the island, different for different islands. Some of it's plate tectonics, right? The plate's going down, the island's going with it. Right, so there's that. A lot of them are suffering erosion, and a lot of them have lost their coral, their barrier reefs. Some small islands, some very small islands, are very dependent on their barrier reefs, or their atolls or whatever, and they're dependent on that to break the big ocean waves so that it reduces the erosion, and those are gone now, and so erosion is accelerating. If you fall asleep, you freeze, and then a polar bear eats you. I think that there could be something to that. Maybe there's not more polar bears, they just show up better, because the polar bear on the ice is invisible, but a polar bear swimming across the ocean, you could see that. Also, I can't help but think that we don't really have a good way to normalize for better tracking, that they're tagging them more and counting them better. you would expect the numbers to increase, and I don't know that they can really make any solid estimate for what the numbers were. Okay, so it is 12 o'clock. We've been doing it for 2 hours. Didn't get any responses from our scheduled guest. Last response was at 9:37, saying he was 14 minutes out, and then no response after that. So I don't know. I guess he's not coming. We'll see. Maybe he comes some other time. All right. Anybody have any final thoughts they want to leave us with? Final thoughts, final discussion points. Summarize what we did talk about today. The main thing we talked about today was the list of globe evidence. We have a big pile of globe evidence that can be broken into a few categories. A lot of them are observations of the sky that would all be explained if there is some kind of refraction that can somehow somehow make it look like a globe, even though it's not a globe. And somehow it makes it look like a perfect globe or an almost perfect sphere. And so that's just a coincidence. And it does it without causing any distortion in the sky for the most part. Again, pretty amazing miracle that it can do that. So that's a lot of them are that. And then there's several that are what we might call terrestrial refraction. So you look, or optical drop. Optical drop, for which I'm forced to say I have no reason to believe optical drop is a thing. The only reason I have to justify optical drop is if the Earth is flat. If you presuppose that the Earth is flat, the only explanation I have for several of these is optical drop. But I'm not willing to accept that as convincing evidence that it's true. If somebody could show that optical drop was a thing somehow without the required assumption that the Earth must be flat in order for this finding to be true. Yeah, that would maybe help. What else? Maps and flights and so forth. They don't work on anything other than a globe. So the map makers are all in on it. It's the best I've got. So this is thin. This is super, super thin excuses. How does optical drop explain images of the globe from space? No, those are fake. Those are fake. The best I've got is that those images of globe from space are all faked. Which of all of these excuses is probably the most plausible. It is plausible to imagine that we could fake pictures of Earth from space. And then what will you come back with? Like if I'm devil's advocate here, I'm going to say, okay, pictures of the globe from space are fake. They're all fake. What do you say? You got any rebuttal for all pictures? All you need is one of them to be real, but none of them, they're not real. They're all fake. And the reason I know they're all fake is because I saw one that was definitely fake. Okay, I saw a picture and there were bubbles. There were bubbles in it, and so I know that all pictures from space are fake because I saw one with bubbles in it. We can make our own pictures from space. Can you get a picture of the globe from space all by yourself? I don't think you can. Okay, so I think the more advanced Yeah, I think the more advanced discussion on this would probably devolve into I'll take a picture from Himawari 8 and I will compare clouds to photos from the ground. We'll take photos from the ground that have peculiar cloud patterns, and I will then look at the satellite images to see if the satellite images match. And no surprise, we will find that they do. What is the best flat Earth argument for why satellite images from space are accurate in their pictures of smoke patterns from the current fires? Or the one that I like the best is there's a smoke trail on the satellite image, and someone sees that and calls the fire department to tell them there's a brush fire that no one has reported yet. And lo and behold, yes, there is a fire, and it has happened. We have discovered forest fires from space. What is your explanation for how that went down? Dead on. Optical drop. You got it. You got it. All right. Balloons. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe balloons. Maybe they have high altitude aircraft or balloons that take these pictures. Yeah, I would buy that. I would say that. Yeah, and then they stitch those images together using artificially intelligent software. They stitch the images from the balloons together to make the well, they're lightning fast, but I think they do it with computers. I think there's no way an artist is painting that fast. I think it has to be generated by a computer. And in order to be accurate, we have to be feeding the computer weather radar data and maybe high altitude balloons and stuff. We have to be feeding the system. Yeah. So yeah, I think we came up with a believable, vaguely plausible explanation for how photos from space could be faked. Yes, I think that's plausible. Is there anything in our list that we have just no way to fake? We have no explanation for it. Oh, the fire. Well, yeah, don't get me started on those lasers, right? Lasers from space. Post-hoc stuff is a test of your imagination. Yes. Cavendish Experiment. That was the one that's the hardest, I think, for me to get out of without just violating logic. Gravity. Gravity exists. And the Cavendish experiment shows it. So, yeah. So how do we get out of gravity? How do we get out of gravity without just saying, no, it doesn't? Yeah. Yeah, the Cavendish and several other experiments like it are very conclusive. I don't see how we can honestly wiggle our way out of that other than to just refuse to look. Anybody got anything on gravity? Blue Marble Science is faking it, as is every science teacher that has one of these. And you could buy your own. You could buy your own, Cavendish dealie. It's like $1,000. Buy one from the store. You buy one online. They'll ship it to you, and then there you go. So, how do we believe that's not real? I don't know. That one's hard. I don't think I have any really good way out of that one. Okay, well, I think I'm going to shut it down then. Yeah. Okay. It's some kind of magnetism. Some kind of magnetism is involved. That's a failure of logic again, because maybe it is magnetism, but that means materials attract each other, right? Like, for example, the one in the sand. The sand attracts sand. Therefore, the materials the Earth is made out of, maybe it is magnetic. Doesn't matter if it's magnetic or not. If they attract to each other, you make a ball. Yeah, and I think ultimately we just have to say no. We say nuh-uh. Nuh-uh is the ultimate out for any of it. You say nuh-uh. No, it doesn't. It's not true. And yeah, I think maybe we can wrap it up with this one. Live long and prosper, folks. Until next time. I don't know. Maybe we'll give young Kali another try. Probably not. I don't know. You guys, let me know if you want to see his thoughts. If he deserves a second chance. Put that down in the comments or something. And yeah, if you guys really want to see his thoughts, I'll try again. But I'm feeling more like, maybe just a troll. I don't know. Okay. Later, y'all.